wealth foundation most people skip. We're going to be talking about building wealth and some of the things that create issues as you're building wealth, such as panic, debt, getting into debt, zero cash cushion, things that disrupt wealth building, okay? Because when you're actually striving to get ahead and you think you're doing the right thing by, investing or putting money away into investment accounts and so forth, but then you're also carrying debt, or you have no liquidity in case of like emergency funds. Things like that can create an obstacle, can create a disruption in what you're trying to accomplish. Okay, so you want to make sure you understand a few things. So the first thing is an emergency fund. People are like, well, I have money in my savings account, checking account, okay, or I have money, I get paid every month, so if something happens, I'll just pay for it, whatever. All right. Well, without an emergency fund, what typically happens, it creates a cycle that people get into, which is debt. Because when you don't have liquidity or cash available to handle an emergency, what's the first thing you're going to go to? Credit cards, or some personal loan at your bank. Well, that's money you never had. So how are you going to pay for it? You start making payments. Well, those payments that you're making for the next year, 2 years, 3 years could have been money would have been putting into a emergency fund, so you wouldn't need to make payments, because all you're doing is paying interest and making the bank more wealthy, or the credit card company, because for every dollar you pay them, 10, 20, 30 cents will go to the interest. So you're always behind. So debt, without emergency fund, that typically is what happens. The other thing is, you want to make sure if you are in debt, you gotta keep it under control. That debt control is making sure you're paying down. When you make the payment, it's not just the minimum amount, but it's also trying to add more towards the principal. So you're bringing down the level of interest that you're paying, and you're shrinking the time on that loan or that credit card time. So, the next thing is income. So increase your income. Skills. I'm going to give you a few examples. Let's say you have a 9 to 5, and you're working 9 to 5, and everything's good, and you are in tech at your job, okay, which is great. That's a skill. Especially now with AI, if you're learning AI, that's a skill that if something happened at your company, you could take with you to another company. That's a skill, okay? Just like the trades industry, you have skills. And so you want to make sure that you're actually, keeping those skills sharp. The other thing is, real estate, okay? There's a lot of real estate agents out there, and last time we looked at NAR, at least in 2025, a large portion of them never even sold a house. Well, how do you keep the skill of the communication with clients, sales, and other things sharp? Well, be a duly licensed agent. Have a license in financial services, so that way you can work with the same clients. Even though they've purchased a home, you can still help them in financial services, or help people that are just looking for financial services. But you're constantly sharpening those skills, those people skills that you're going to need when the market flips and changes, okay? And then the last thing is investing. Grow your money. Learn how to, maybe that becomes a skill. You learn as maybe a real estate agent, learns financial services, learns how to invest, things like that. Start learning to grow your money. That's a skill. People don't realize it. You have to understand how money works. So those are some things that I want to leave you with as far as the Wealth Foundation, and that most people skip. They think about just well, I'll hire this person, I'll hire that person. That's great. But what do you know? What are you learning? Never stop learning. And when you have that skill, whatever it is, it allows you to continue to grow in that profession. Thank you for watching, and feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. And thank you for subscribing.